Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have Mike Verret. Mike is, well, let me put it this way. Talking about your business is hard. And if you're in business, you know this. It's hard to talk about your business. It's easy in your mind. You know exactly what you're saying. It's what other people say, and so it's hard. It's not just about what you sell or make or anything like that. It's really about your audience. And Mike shows businesses how to talk about themselves. And he just didn't come at this one day. He's got 20 years experience in advertising and marketing. And he has the ability to hear a business concept, understand it, connect the dots for the audience. This is what other people see. This is what you see. This is what they see. He spent 13 years in the agency world. And prior to that, he was with Hasbro Toys. And you're never a real kid if you don't know what Hasbro Toys are. But his business has his message, his audience, clients. He's worked with people in the U.S., Hong Kong, India, Germany, Mexico, Brazil, UK. I don't see anything. I don't see any South Africa here. I don't see any Antarctica or Australia. You're letting us down. You got to hit the whole world, Mike.
I know. I missed a few places in my journey around. First of all, thank you very much for having me, Frank.
Well, I appreciate it.
Obviously, you and I met through a networking connection, and I think it's just a demonstration of what you do and what you've built and how important it is. But I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for networking. I do have an illustrious past in marketing and advertising. And for about 20 years of it, 19 years of it, it was on the agency side. I worked a lot with youth brands. It just sort of happens that that's how it worked out. And at one point, I was hired by Hasbro's ad agency to be the on-site account director at Hasbro Toys and Games. I live in Rhode Island, and Hasbro is about 30 minutes north of me. I had no idea that it was even there. And going in there, I was so excited to make kids' dreams come true. Turns out that the CPG world is a lot less fun than I thought it would be. Regardless of what the business is, you're building something. It's a timeline. It's a format. But what I got in that experience of working first for the agency and then 6 years working for the brand team was a crash course on business and understanding how businesses look at their audience. And in my experience, I found that I was not a good brand manager. I was not the type of person in the corporate world in that 6 years that was paying attention to timelines for development and gate reviews and where the manufacturing stands, and then we worry about the marketing. To me, it was really cluttered. We're trying to sell a toy or a game to a kid or a family. So why does it have to be this complicated on the back end? Well, a lot of that is just the manufacturing world, and you get what you get. But what I noticed in what we were doing was a lot of times it was about the plastic we were putting on the shelf. And it wasn't about who we were making it for. Even advertising, no matter what business it is, if you watch an advertisement, let's say for toys or for even a weight loss product, doesn't matter. What you see as a consumer is the deal, but is what they're selling. But if you were to watch that commercial through the lens of just a human being, you would see that they're not even close to talking about you the right way. They're trying to use music to inspire you or whatever the hippest trend is or whatever word you want to insert there. But it's like they're a machine trying to learn how to talk to humans. And I did not like the brand world, the brand management world, but we had our global sales meeting in 2016 come around. And I was working on Hasbro games at the time. And we looked at it as what are our sales goals for Monopoly and all what we're doing. But at that meeting, I look out and I see 200 people sitting there who already know what the products are, how much they cost, and how they work. There's no big surprise. They have sell sheets, they have pricing sheets, they have videos, they have all of that stuff. They have our marketing guys. What they don't have is an authentic experience of what the consumer is going to see. So I sort of took advantage of that and turned our sales meeting into an episode of The Tonight Show, but with no interviews and just stupid human tricks. And we made oversized versions of games and had these people, we would pick a GM of a country or a region and have them come up and play this oversized game. And you'd see them laugh and you'd see the crowd laugh and you'd realize that's what it's about. And if you could get the people internally thinking that way, if you can get that message right for the audience, they're going to latch on too. But the biggest thing that happened in that time was I became known in an organization of 6,000 to 7,000 people as the person who could do that. And I realized that out of all the things that I've done for 20 some odd years, my connection point was actually my understanding of an audience and how they're thinking. And especially when they're in front of me, if I just pay attention to what they're doing, I don't even get nervous. I have social anxiety. I don't want to be up in front of 200 people. But if I'm paying attention to only them, I started to understand their motivation or what they're going to respond to. And I learned how to talk to them. So I have to, this is one of the foibles of working from home. I have to let my dog in because he's barking at me.
Okay.
So when I left Hasbro in 2018, October of 2018, I wanted to do what I felt was my best shot, what I do best and what could define me as being different. Because I believe you got to be first, best, or different. Different for me was important. And I stood out in a big Fortune 500 corporation for what I could do. They sent me around the world to do it. No, I didn't make it to South Africa or Australia, but Australia goes to Hong Kong Toy Fair and South Africa goes to the European Toy Fair in Nuremberg, Germany. So I was still talking to all those people without actually getting to go there, which I was disappointed in. I'd really like to go to those two places, but they came to me. Point being, I started my business as a presentation skills training business. And what I realized is I did that because that was the literal translation of what I realized I could do in an organization if I understood an audience. About 8 months in, I realized that it's not the audience in front of me that I understand. It's an audience. It's human nature meets common sense. I tell people I got my master's in human nature and common sense by managing a bar for 2 years after college. But it really is just thinking about how a human being would process something and how they want to be spoken to or what's going to be important to them in the order of your message. I turned to that into this business that I have now, showing businesses how to talk about themselves. And 100% of what's important to you for your business, only about 2% of that's important to your audience, at least until they connect to you. So to use a real world example, all of us have written resumes and we put a lot of time into what we've accomplished, where we've been, what we've achieved, what our roles were, our expertise. But an employer only looks at a resume from 7 to 9 seconds, which means by definition, all they can consume is that top sentence. And if they don't connect to it, if they don't connect to who you are or what you represent as an opportunity, they move it to the side. They never see everything you spent all that time on. I look at business communication the same way. You need the perspective of your audience to understand how to get your message across the water to them. I offer that perspective to my clients and I show them what their message looks like with their audience. Then I show them how to fix it, how to humanize it, if you will, but how to streamline it and clarify it. So the end result is they connect with you, they go through the flow of why you're important to them, then the services you provide, then how to get in touch. It's a mechanic that I've built so I can show the businesses how important it is for that first 7-second story, if you will. How do you get their attention right there? The way that I've built my business, though, is really why I'm here. I started out going down all of these paths about how I'm going to message what I do. And I was going to do Facebook or Instagram, and I had my website, and I had all these plans, and one of them was podcasting, just like we were talking about before we hit record.
Yep.
I was going to start a podcast, but what I realized is I was doing every single thing somebody else told me I should be doing. And what I know of myself is when I meet someone, I can form a good relationship with them on their terms or meet them halfway, and we can have a productive conversation. In a lot of cases, it's mutually beneficial. Sounds a lot like networking to me. So I look at networking. I don't look at myself as a good salesperson at all. I look at myself as interesting enough to have a conversation with. I'm not going to be boring. I offer free 30-minute phone calls because I know that my strength is going to be building a relationship with that person in real time. So I've changed my model completely from all these things to LinkedIn for content, networking, like one-to-one networking for connections, solidifying connections that start in LinkedIn, and finally arriving in situations like this where I have the opportunity to be on other people's programs to talk about how it's relevant to their business. And it's opened doors for me to talk to people from all around the world. And it's people who want to connect for the right reasons. I've been crystal clear on my message and how I interact with people. And it's started to align me with the right types of people, where it's not, I have 5,000 connections on LinkedIn, but I don't know any of them. It starts to really focus it for me. And I start talking to the right people. I look for the right people. So it's been an interesting, I can tell people, I've done everything from concepting a brand based on a consumer insight to writing and appearing in the commercial for that brand. I've touched everything in between. I can talk to you until you're blue about variable margins and trade marketing and all of this stuff. But the bottom line is none of it matters if you can't form that connection with your audience. So that's where I focus.
Yeah, I think that's what you talk about is powerful, certainly in the corporate sense, certainly in the toy world. But we're all a brand, right?
Yeah.
And I guess tying this back to just networking in general, that's where I see people tripping up. Is they overcomplicate what is. They try to be cute, use language in there that sounds, hey, I'm smart language, I call it, and too much of it, throwing in the kitchen sink, and it doesn't connect with anybody, and not even necessarily making a sale, but selling themselves. That first 7 seconds don't sell the next 7 seconds. And that's, really the same sort of thing.
I think, a great example, I read an article ages ago about Warren Buffett saying the most important thing in business that he learned was public speaking and presentation, because it doesn't matter how good your product is, how great your service is, how much money you can save someone. If you can't say it, if you can't connect to the audience with it, they'll go on to the next search result. So what I've seen it in networking too, where it's almost mechanical, where they're, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm an accountant here, and this is how to get in touch with me. And they just sit down again. Or we offer these services and this is the type of client I'm looking for, referral I'm looking for, and they just sit down again. They're not selling anything at that point. They haven't done anything that makes them memorable or connected to the audience that they're talking to in that moment. It's not a mechanic. It's a mechanism. That's your audience. If you're in a networking group, for instance, and it's your turn to talk about what you do, you've got to leave an impression. So let me give you just a quick example of what I'm talking about, Frank.
Please.
I have been in networking groups where there are PR people there. Hi, I'm so-and-so. My firm is called this. We are a PR firm. This is what we do. This is the type of referral we're looking for. But that PR firm, I'm immediately assigning value to. Like, I already know what it means to a degree. And okay, check, got it. Know what that person does. But a friend of mine who's been running her own agency for going on 34 years now. For 34 years, when somebody asked her what she does for a living, her response was, I make news. And immediately the audience that she's speaking to, whether it's at a cocktail party or at a big presentation or whatever, somebody asks her that question, it begs the question, what kind of news, or what do you mean? Because it could be she's a reporter, it could be PR, it could be she's an unruly celebrity that shows up in the gossip column. You don't know yet.
Right.
But the point is, everybody's paying attention to find out what's next. And what's next is businesses have a hard time talking in flattering terms about themselves. That's why they hire PR agencies. I help them find those words to pull out and make them look the best with their news.
I think there's a great story. Yep, I think there's a great degree of irony in that you have a PR firm that's horrible, lack of a better term, pimping themselves. Right?
I absolutely should have used a different example, but my friend is in PR. Her one message is brilliant every single time. So, but yeah, it is very ironic. You see almost the personality of the business in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Like someone who's a CPA, let's say. I know that CPAs are not like me. They are far more reserved. They're more cerebral. They're more left-brained. But if a CPA were to come out and say, "Hi, this is my firm. I'm an accountant. I help you with taxes. These are the other services I provide. This is what I'm looking for." Great. If that same CPA comes up and says, "I save businesses a ton of money on taxes, and here's how. Here's why they're not looking at these things. Here's what I look for. Get in touch. This is the type of person I'm looking for." They're grabbing you with exactly that. I save companies money. All right, well, how? And now it goes through this funnel of information. What do they need to know first? And you grab their intrigue and then explain how you do it right down to the detail. And it's almost like a really well-written FAQ page on a website where it starts with the most general, what is it? And then it funnels down to the most detailed information. The reason it's written that way is that's how your audience thinks. They're not thinking all over the place. They're not thinking in different levels of importance. They're thinking in logic. What is it? What's the next thing I need to know? The next thing I need to know, because that's how a story's told. So it's important to latch onto that connection at the beginning. And a lot of people don't look at it that way in networking specifically. They look at it as just saying, here's what I do. And what that translates to is, if you ever run into someone who needs a CPA or who needs a PR firm, that's what I do, have them call me. But you haven't given me any reason to go tell people, oh, you got to talk to this PR firm. You're not achieving first, best, or different in my mind in that situation. Like, that's my philosophy. You got to be one of those three things.
Yeah.
How do you stand out in somebody's mind so that they'd remember to refer you, let alone what you do? Why would it trigger, oh, you got to talk to this person. I just met them. Wait until you hear their philosophy on this, or wait until you meet them, or you've left an impression on them at that point. And that's something that I think is lost in networking, is not leaving that impression of who you are in your brand and just going through the motions. And you brought up the other side of it, too cute. Too cute starts with somebody having an idea about talking about their business that has such relevance to them that they don't think about how much of a percent of their audience they're missing.
Right.
Okay, so excuse me. So a quick example of that. I talked to someone today who explained themselves as the Cheshire Cat for your business. And I understand Cheshire Cat. I can associate that with what the imagery conjures up. Everybody knows where it's from, but what the hell is the relevance? Right. And if you have to go in and explain the relevance, it becomes more complicated. So instead of originating with the Cheshire Cat, who has a very specific purpose in this bigger story, if he shifts to talking about Alice in Wonderland and her trying to find her way through this crazy forest, it's a much easier allusion to the Cheshire Cat knows the directions. So now you're tying meaning to the Cheshire Cat with a much bigger idea that grabs a larger percent of the audience. You're not making them think about what's the Cheshire Cat. You're drawing them to Alice in Wonderland. Then they're like, oh yeah, the Cheshire Cat. And then you get into the intent. So it's about that order of information for your audience. And in networking, if it's treated that way, where you can sort of, I go through my own process, Frank, of defining your story, your message, what you would say in a networking group, what you would put on a billboard, what you would put on your website, what you would say at a cocktail party. I don't care. It should be one thing. And that one thing everybody calls the elevator pitch. Or you've heard that term, obviously. Anybody who's ever been in networking says, you got to have your elevator pitch ready because you're only going to have 20 seconds to say what you. Here's the thing. If you allow yourself 10, 20 seconds even to explain what you do, you're going to use words that your audience is going to register and assign meaning to. I'm a communications consultant, for instance. You've already put meaning on that because you recognize it. But if I can create something unexpected, then the game becomes not 10 to 20 seconds. It becomes how far up the elevator they'll go to listen to you. So imagine, excuse me, allergy season. It's always a delight for these. So imagine the person gets on the elevator and you get on the elevator and their finger is hovering over a button. And they turn and say, what do you do? And they're going to hit a button based on how interested they are in the first thing you say.
Right.
They're going to get off at the second floor if you say, I'm a PR executive. They've already assigned meaning to it. I make news. Oh, I'm going to have to hear more. And they're going to hit a higher floor because they need to know more. The idea is to get them to ride up with you, but it has to be in the order and the construct that they're going to understand. So in networking, the first thing in telling your story, I don't care where it is, the first thing is creating that point of intrigue or that point of interest that's going to get them to say, tell me a little bit more about that. And where that ends up leading is, who do you help? What's the problem? We all are familiar with the rest of the construct. Who you help? What's your solution? How do you do it? How to get in touch? But those other 4 or 5 floors don't even matter unless you can create that first point of engagement with what comes out. So real world example again for you. Let's say you're into spy novels and you're at a bookstore and you've picked out 3 that have interesting covers. How are you going to decide which one you're going to read? You're not going to read the first sentence because it's not going to tell you anything. And you can't read the whole book. That's counterintuitive. You're going to read the inside flap of the back of the book. And you're going to see what the summary, the intrigue they put in the summary of 350 pages looks like. And if it catches your attention and your interest, that's the one you're going to read. Businesses have to think the same way, especially in networking. How do you get people to remember what you do? It's not just by saying it and putting your contact information in the chat, right, or that you're on a newsletter. You need to leave an impact on that audience in that moment. And that is the biggest trick with networking, that people, if they're looking at it as being too much of that or none of it, looking at it very mechanically on this side or very unrealistically on this side or very inward focused on this side, you're missing the point of networking. You need to be memorable. You need to create that point of differentiation in the mind. Even if it's somebody you see every week, you still need to be able to deliver that point of intrigue so that if they ever come across the right person, it triggers that memory of you differentiating yourself and they remember what you're talking about and what you provide.
Let's shift gears here in the final few minutes. Let's talk about Verret Associates, things you're doing, how the audience can help you, how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I have 3 sort of businesses that I tried out, 3 buckets of business that I love to help. The biggest one for me, though, is small businesses. I love working with small businesses because everything is truly important. As businesses scale and get bigger, they have departments for stuff. But you and me, for instance, if it's our business, we have to worry about everything. So that really clouds, okay, what do we have to say to drive our business? So I love working with small businesses who are just starting out or growing, want to get to that next level. That's where I thrive because I know how much it means to them. Mm-hmm. But I also work in the service-based industries like agency marketing firms, things like that. People who have their capabilities deck or their RFP response, and they want to beat the competition. They'll bring in me to help tell that story in a way that's effective for that audience. And then finally, I work with big companies too. Most recently, Melissa and Doug Toys. I did it's project-based, but I did a 3-day shoot of a virtual toy fair video series because none of their buyers could go to Toy Fair this year. So it runs the gamut. But who I love to help are people who have 100% of an idea, of a passion that they want to drive. And that's what they know best. And everything else clouds where they want to go. So I can help them uncloud it, to clear it all up, give them clarity on what their message is, so it sets them apart. So those types of small businesses are always a great opportunity for me.
Sounds good. Get a hold of you through your website?
Yes, just visit verretassociates.com and you could just click the green button to schedule a call. I sell free 30-minute calls, Frank. That's the only thing I know how to sell. Everything comes out of just good conversation. So love meeting new people, but I really want to thank you for having me. This is a treat.
To wrap things up, remember, we're looking for some enterprising business types to join our team as franchisees of AmSpirit Business Connections. Our franchisees work with entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals in their area to help them become more successful through networking and the exchange of quality business referrals in a structured weekly morning meeting. This is a unique franchise opportunity, you see, because these meetings are in the morning. A successful business type or professional can add this franchise opportunity onto what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, these franchisees work the AmSpirit Business Connections model. The rest of the time, they're attorneys, accountants, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. The wonderful thing is that not only do our franchisees realize a financial gain from operating the AmSpirit Business Connections model, but the business networks that they build and develop become a great source of referrals for their primary business as well. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you are that someone. Whatever the case, to learn more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, please contact me using the email in the show notes or the one we provide at the end of this program.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.